Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Chasing Labels. And we are going to be once again having a really interesting person here for these exclusive interviews that we've been doing all along. Um,
Exclusive.
yeah, exclusive.
I wouldn't say it's exclusive. I
When I
mean, other
just
people have
said
talked to these people,
when I
but
just said those words, I knew it was wrong, and I just
yeah,
rolled
yeah.
with it. And then Steven caught me like a
It's
safety net.
I don't. I want to
It's
make sure people to
exclusive.
understand these
Yeah.
people have been talked to before.
Yeah,
You know,
exclusive to us, I guess,
sure,
you know
sure.
what I
It
mean?
is. It
Like,
is
you can
us.
only
Yeah,
hear these words on this podcast,
yeah.
I
Nobody
guess.
would mess it up this bad. Yeah,
Yeah,
let's go ahead.
damn right, damn right. You know what? I was
Yeah.
improvising there for a second, and I'm just derailed now.
It's okay. Now,
But
now, go ahead. Go ahead.
but
Finish
w
up.
yeah, but let me get into my intro mode. So today we have a very special guest, someone that I've been following on social media for many, many years, a social media acquaintance, if you will. Someone who is geographically from my neck of the woods, which I find a lot more people around that are or have some type of connection here than I thought. This is a film historian, a critic, a film journalist, a film historian, like I just said twice. And this is Raquel Stecher. Welcome.
Hi. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk to you guys.
Yes, thank you, thank you. Both of me and Andrew are big fans of classic film and film noir specifically, and I know that's a big thing for you as well because you do hang out in the TCM, film festivals and realm and fan club as we call it. So yeah, we'll be excited to maybe nerd out about some classic film with you.
Yeah, that
Yes.
sounds great.
Yeah, this would be a very kind of personal episode for me. Not much personal, just like getting to talk to someone who's deep into the roots of classic Hollywood, the TCM film fandom and all that kind of stuff. Someone who's been to the film festival that I've always wanted to go to, in the TCM Classic Film Festival every single year. I see it come and I see it go, and I'm like, one day
You
I'll get
gotta
there.
go.
I
You'll
yeah,
love it.
I know I would. It would be like overwhelmingly impactful, I think.
You know,
Plus,
you seen that movie, The Bucket List, with
uh,
Jack Nicholson? That's going to be
yes.
Andrew. He'll be older. He'll finally make. He'll be like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to go and do all the things I want to do, and then he's going to like go to the
Go to
festival
the
and
TCM Film Festival.
yeah.
I tell people that all the time because people ask me, where would you want to go? There's always like, where do you want to go in the world if you could go anywhere? And I choose the TCM Film Festival really just because the element there seems very much my vibe. Like everyone's there to enjoy and love movies. But we'll get into that. But first, we do want to get into a little bit of Raquel's background when it comes to her love of movies and just her life in general. So please, tell us everything about yourself
Everything.
in concise time.
I am a full-time film critic and historian now. I have been writing about classic movies specifically since 2007. I started a blog called Out of the Past, named after the famous film noir Out of the Past from 1947.
That one's
And
pretty
that
good.
was a Yes, it's my favorite film noir and one of my top favorite movies. And I needed an outlet to share my love of classic movies, so I had that, and that kind of grew into the career I have now. And right now, I run a site called Kel Movies, where I write about newer movies. I write for Turner Classic Movies. I write research articles, scripts, things like that, and I also write for DVD Netflix. So I'm a lifer for anything movies. Like now it's just like completely consumes me. But it's interesting, like my journey to movies is kind of unique because I grew up without any sort of like cultural education. So I have two, like my parents are immigrants from other countries, and they didn't really have any interest in like American pop culture, art of any sort. So I didn't really have any guidance. Like I had guidance at school for books, which I was a big book fan, and I had a career in the book publishing industry for a long time. But I didn't really have any guidance when it came to like movies or television or music or anything. So I was kind of on my own. Um, which is kind of unusual because people usually have their parents or their grandparents or an aunt and uncle kind of guide them. So I was on my own. So I basically picked everything I wanted to see, which is actually, it kind of worked out for me. Anytime I went to the movie theater and I would ask my mom to take me, I would get to pick out the movie, which is kind of cool if you think about it. And I mean, the only time she ever picked a movie herself was she really wanted to see the J-Lo movie Selena. But otherwise, like everything else I picked, I even like I remember I really wanted to see this kind of obscure period film, Washington Square from 1997, and it was playing at Kendall Square Cinema, kind of like just across the river from Boston. And I had my learner's permit, and I drove my mother's red truck, and I took her out there just to go see that movie. I was like very dedicated to, like, if I had my heart set on watching something, I would go see it. But yeah, like my experience, I mean, the guidance would have been nice to guide me towards, an understanding of like film history and just having that nostalgia. I didn't really have that, but I did have a unique experience in exploring movies on my own. So I really kind of curated my own love of movies. And as a kid, like very much, I really liked movies that were about other kids or about animals or anything that interests me at the time. And I realized really early on that if I had an interest at the time and there was a movie that was connected to that interest, like it kind of empowered me to go explore another world. So it's really it was life changing just being able to explore different like fictional or real worlds through books and movies. So yeah, that was
Yeah.
kind of my journey to fall in love with movies.
Very much
Yeah.
a journey of self-discovery, which it happens
Yeah,
for many people when it comes to movies. There's an intro, like kind of like a gateway, and then once you get in, you kind of run wild and just go
kind of
with
go on
it
your own,
and,
yes.
and pick different paths and all that stuff. Because I always say that you know movies are kind of endless in terms of which paths you can go. You can go halfway down a path and then diverge into someplace else. It's really endless in terms of what you can get into and what you like or don't like and whatnot. Um, when it comes to kind of like your formative years, like you were saying, going to the movies and all that kind of stuff. What was it like for your formal education? Were movies part of that? Like, did you want to become a movie critic or something like that?
It like I mean, my early years I was watching like when I was a child, I was watching movies about young people who were like fiercely independent or very much wanted to go out and explore the world. Like I was watching like E.T. and The Little Mermaid and Annie. Like I was really drawn to stories about like very headstrong kids and who knew what they wanted out of life. And I was watching the typical movies too, like The Lion King and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. And but then like when I got into like my teen years, I was watching some movies that were like transformative for me, like Romeo and Juliet from 1968, the Franco Zeffirelli movie with Olivia Hussey and Leonard Whiting, who I got to meet and interview. That was a really
Oh,
amazing. That
amazing!
was like a full circle moment because that movie was so important to me as a teenager. It was taught in English
I was
classes
just
in
going to
high
say
school.
that's the
This
movie before the Baz Luhrmann one came out. That's the
Yes,
movie that Romeo and Juliet was shown in
absolutely.
every high school class in America at the
It was
time.
required viewing, and like it made, and plus it like kind of married my interest of like literary and film in one, and that made a huge impact on me. And then like in the 90s, when I was in high school, it was very much a time of like literary adaptations and period films like Merchant and Ivory. And then I watched like Sense and Sensibility. I watched a bunch of like there was a great time for like Victorian novels to be adapted, like The Portrait of a Lady, Jane Campion's movie. I was obsessed with that movie for a long time. Michael Winterbottom's Jude, that like completely changed my perspective on okay, how am I going to live my life? Am I going to let destiny guide me or am I going to forge my own path? And even like a fun film like You've Got Mail from 1998, like the Nora Ephron movie, that one was like, maybe I want to work in the book industry. Like some of these movies were really having a strong impact on me. But I didn't really take film studies seriously until college, and I on and off, like I just needed credits, to add. So I picked a film course for fun, and that really like blew my mind. We were watching and analyzing like Out of the Past. That was the first time I had ever watched that movie, and I was like, what is this movie? It's so mysterious and a little confusing, and it's sexy, and it's like it's got a lot of things I want to watch it over and over again. Who's this Robert Mitchum guy? Like I was obsessed. And then we were watching also like Citizen Kane. I wrote a paper on Singing in the Rain, and that was my springboard to like really study film and film history. And then I was just watching TCM nonstop, and I was renting movies back when there was still Blockbuster, and like so that's when I started taking like actually learning about movies and watching more seriously.
Yeah, I didn't. I only took 1 year of college. I found out school wasn't really my thing, but I did take one film course in college that I loved. I wish I could have just kept doing that, and it was a film analysis class. And
Oh,
I remember the first movie that, for me, my Out of the Past was On the Waterfront. Was the first
oh
movie where I
yeah.
saw it and really wanted to analyze it, and really felt like I was looking at the movie past just what was on the surface. Um,
Right.
Mm,
and having that discussion in class and seeing what everybody else thought about the film and how they saw the film, it became one of the first experiences I had with other people, where I was discussing a film out loud and feeling like I was connecting with people on the same thing. So
yeah,
that was, yeah, I mean, it could be a
similar
great
here.
atmosphere for film,
Yeah, it
analysis.
was similar for me as well. I had already been a big film fan. I had already, um, you know, I had already started collecting movies by the time I had started taking film courses. I think 2011, 2012 was when I was starting to take some film courses. Um, I, when I went to college in 2006, my college really didn't have film courses. They didn't have a film department. I don't even think they still do to this day a film studies. But I had switched from undergrad to part-time, and I was taking like 2 courses a semester, lessening the workload. And then when you get towards the end, like Raquel said, there's electives you've got to take where you've got to fill in those requirements. And I was like, I love movies. Let me start taking these film courses. So the first one I took was like kind of like kind of like not a 101, but it was like history of film, like be like the classic era. And we went all the way from like the silent era and moved all the way up to like the 1980s, I think. And that's when I was introduced to Italian neorealism and the French New Wave, and then the British realism from the 60s and whatnot. And also when I was introduced to film noir and people like Orson Welles. I think the first Orson Welles film I ever saw was The Stranger. That was the one they
Oh,
showed us, and it's not
wow.
known as one of his better films, but I've always liked it because it was my intro to like his version of film noir. And then of course I would go back and watch Citizen Kane and The Trial and The Magnificent Ambersons. I'm just a gigantic Orson Welles uh, not aficionado, a fan, big fan of his work, and I've just delved into all of his work and whatnot. So I talk about him every time I can on here, because it's the
He's
most bittersweet.
fascinating.
It's the one of the most bittersweet of careers you've ever seen because there's so much
Yeah.
that he never got to do, and there's so much left undone.
I'm surprised there hasn't really been a real like biopic movie about him, like a real like a good like a big. I mean, they haven't really done one of them, have
Well,
they?
they did do Me and Orson Welles, the Richard
Yeah, but
Linklater
that wasn't
film.
like a career spanning,
No, it
like
was just seeing
movie.
him
Yeah,
at a specific time when
yeah,
he was at the Mercury Theater doing plays, which is
yeah.
where he got his start. His interviews, I always recommend go online to his interviews with Dick Cavett. They're always fascinating on YouTube.
Yes. And it's so
M-
funny because he was a bigger guy and Dick Cavett's so small. So like already
I had to
you
frame
know,
them.
like he's got like a huge presence, and it's just like they're really interesting. And like that collection of Orson Welles chats that was it Henry Jaglom had with him,
Yeah,
that they collected
wasn't
in a book.
Lunches with
Lunches with
Orson.
Orson. Yes,
Yes.
I read that, and that was fascinating. Just
There's
like his
there's
mind was just
oh yeah.
yeah,
There's also the Peter
took me all.
Bogdanovich book, which is just him interviewing
He had a lot of
Orson
stories
Welles.
about him.
They were like friends. Orson lived with him, I think, in the 70s. And he always
Yeah, he
told
did.
there was a great story. He told that Orson Welles loved like late night sitcoms. He loved Dick Van Dyke, so he would be up late at night watching Dick Van Dyke on
That's
television
what
and
I'm saying.
whatnot.
Like, we need a career spanning Orson Welles movie. Like, you could
They
do
should
some.
do it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
It would be. I mean, whoever played Orson Welles, that would be an Oscar contending.
you know who
like,
would have been
performance.
fantastic as Orson Welles if he was still alive?
Mm.
Philip Seymour Hoffman
mm,
could have
Oh
maybe been like a
yeah.
really great
yeah.
Orson Welles, maybe.
I think I mean,
You know.
he played Capote very, very well.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
actually out used book shopping the other day, and I saw the Capote book, and I almost bought it. I probably should have. Maybe I may go back and get it. But actually, that does transition into another kind of fascination, or something that you're into, Raquel, and I can see it literally behind you.
Yeah.
Books seem to be a huge part of your life.
Yes. And this is just my collection of film books that's behind me. It's like you can only see like 3 shelves, but it's actually a 5-shelf bookshelf that's got over 300 books on it. And at this point it's a library. It's good. Like when I move, like, when I pass on, it's going to be the Raquel Stecher Film Research Library. Somebody's
Nice.
going to have to inherit it.
Is it like now? Are you like? Have you read most of them, if not all of them? Or are you like us, where we buy movies and we don't have a lot of them that we've watched?
I have read a lot of them, but I've been acquiring more than I can actually keep up with.
There you go.
So
Yeah, that's us. That's us.
I would say like maybe more than half I've read.
Well, that's better than us.
I've
Then.
read a lot.
Okay, good. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's good.
And I
were
use
my
a lot
first
for
love.
research. So
Yeah.
Yeah, books were my first love as well, collecting books. I say this all the time, I spent many of my teenage years just hanging out at bookstores for hours and not really buying anything. I remember Borders bookstores were a big thing here. That was my favorite
Oh,
store. And
I
there
bought my
was one.
first DVD there.
Yeah, I used to buy DVDs there too, and then I used to buy books and whatnot. But I would just stay there for hours as a teenager by myself, just walking the shelves and whatnot. And I also remember you, Raquel, used to do YouTube videos about your book collection, and
Yes.
I would watch them with a fine tooth comb and like be on my Goodreads, like
Oh,
hunting them down to add, because I'm like, I might as well learn from the experts. That's how you have to learn these things. There are people out there sharing their knowledge, so it's like you've gotta like take from the experts because sometimes you just don't
yes.
know. Ignorance is not it's not something to be ashamed of. You know what I mean? We're always trying to learn everything as we go. So take information from people who you trust, really. But yeah, I know you have a massive book collection. And did that start early on, collecting books and buying books?
Yeah, no, I've been buying books since I was a little kid, and I could use my allowance to buy R.L. Stine horror novels. I mean, like it goes back that far, but like I think my first ever film book was actually about the making of Citizen Kane, and it had some information about also the making of the Magnificent Ambersons. So Orson Welles as this basically my first film book, and then just like the books that I got in that course that I took in college. And then from there, it just accumulated. And when I got really serious about classic movies and really wanted to do more research and learn more, then that's when the book collection grew and grew. And since I was just at the TCM Classic Film Festival last month, I make a trip every time I'm there to Larry Edmonds' bookshop on Hollywood Boulevard. And I just have a nice chat with Jeff, the owner, and I scan all their books. I think I bought 9 this time. And I was like, can you ship it to me? Because I don't think I'll fit it in my luggage. So I have
amazing that you say that, because I've got the bookmark
classic
here.
bookmark.
Larry Edmonds Bookshop since 1938, Hollywood Boulevard. Because that's where I bought coincidentally Eddie Muller's most recent book. I think he did a hardcover re-release of his film noir book, and I bought that like
Yes,
last
Dark
year.
City.
And then yes, Dark City, and then I got these in the mail, came with it. So I've just had them around, and it's amazing that you just mentioned that. I also follow them on social media. If anybody's interested, they do have an online store where you can buy kind of exclusive autographed books and whatnot that are
Yeah.
specifically for there, which are really cool.
Yeah, I think he's selling the Eddie Muller's Dark City and probably Noir Bar that's coming out later this month, which I'm reading right now, and it's pairing 50 different film noirs with a cocktail recipe for each. It's so if anyone loves film noir and cocktails, it's like a nice combo. But yeah, no, I've gotten like many signed books from there, and I think like I have like some prize collections. Like I have like a copy of Walter Mirish's memoir, and it's signed to Robert Boyle.
Oh wow.
And I think it must have been part of Robert Boyle's estate, the great art director who worked with Alfred Hitchcock. So I have like Walter Mirish's signature, and it was something that Robert Boyle owned, which is pretty cool. And I have like signed books by like Carl Reiner and Dick Cavett. So I have like a selection.
Oh, I'm incredibly jealous, because my dad and my brother, they drove across country, so they drove all the way from the Northeast to LA. This was the years and years and years ago, and they went to Larry Edmunds bookstore when it was on Sunset, I think, because I think it's since moved
Okay,
because
it
of
moved around a bit. Yeah.
yeah, and they went there, and my brother was FaceTiming me in it, and I had no idea the concept of the store, and I just remember seeing the shelves and shelves. I had them buy me some screenplays of, like, Stalag
Oh yeah.
17 and then stuff like that, and I was just like, yeah, I didn't even know how to respond. I think I got, the big Warner Brothers, like, History of Warner Brothers book, like, I something you remember or something like that. I think it has the same name as the podcast. I can't remember, and I got him.
You must
They
remember
actually
this?
yes, I think I got that, and then I also got actually Dark City when it was the paperback version of that.
Oh,
I
yeah.
got that as well, and then they went and did like a tour at Paramount and stuff, so they got me some
Oh,
stuff from
nice.
there, like the Godfather screenplay, I think, or they got me something from to do from there, like all the promotional stuff and whatnot. It was interesting. They FaceTimed me when they went to the gates of Paramount, and I kind of
Oh,
cried.
yeah, the
I kind of
famous
cried.
gates.
So I was like living surrogately through them while they were in LA because I remember the Paramount gate in Sunset Boulevard where
Mm,
when Norma Desmond goes there to the lot and whatnot and sees Cecil B. DeMille, and I'm like, it's kind of amazing. That's it's half a century later and it's still there. So
yeah.
that's yeah, that's incredible. But this is the Raquel show, not the Andrew have nostalgia for things
I think
show.
that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's so cool, I think. I mean, Hollywood, it's not like the best place to travel to, but if you're into film history, there's so much that's still there that has a special connection. It's really cool to see it in person.
Yeah, and I guess that's as good a good a place to kind of transition into. I know you go to the TCM Film Festival all the time, and you cover actually several film festivals. So I
Mhm.
guess I wanted to kind of get into that because I think you didn't you go to South by Southwest this year as well?
Yes. Yeah,
Yes.
so I've been covering the TCM Classic Film Festival since 2013. Um, Pretty much all the way through. I had to take a break in 2019, and then the pandemic, it turned to virtual. But pretty much consistently since then, I've gone every year, and like it's changed over the years, but the first several years I went were like absolutely magical. Like there was every single festival, there was like life-changing experiences, and I just could not believe I would be talking about what I experienced at that festival the entire year. I'd make everyone sick of me, which was actually good that I had a blog that I could just put that out there and have people who were interested. And I know that some people told me that they came to the festival based off of my coverage and other people's coverage that they read. So and then in like 2018 I got really interested in possibly expanding my career to new movies. So the one big thing that I did was I signed up for the media inclusion program that the Toronto International Film Festival had. And I don't remember if it was their first year doing it, but it was their first like really big push for it. They wanted smaller, like up and coming writers, people of color, LGBTQ, women. Like they wanted to see if they could expand their reach. And I applied for that and I got in, and that opened like so many doors for me. Because the TIFF festival is just like it's pretty much like the big North American festival. It's where most of the Oscar contenders premiere in North America, or just it like have their world premieres. It's a really big festival. And from there, I got into Rotten Tomatoes. They accepted me because of that program. South by Southwest actually invited me to apply for that festival the following year because of the TIFF media inclusion. So I was just like on a roll. It was great. And then like the pandemic closed a bunch of stuff, but it opened up virtual festivals. So I got to attend Slam Dance, Sundance, AFI, and a bunch of like smaller festivals like Nashville, Indie Memphis, and things like that. So I really got to expand my reach. My favorite small festival is Double Exposure Film Festival, which happens in DC every year, and it's all investigative journalism in terms of like documentaries and shorts. It's really one of my favorite festivals. It's very, very niche. But yeah, like covering the festivals has been so much fun. Both virtually and in person. In person obviously is going to be more expensive because I got to pay for my own way.
Yeah.
But like, Cannes is happening right now. That would be amazing to go to, but that's like really hard to get into.
That's always been talk about bucket list lifetime goals.
Oh
I get to
yeah.
hang out in the south of France and go to a film festival. That's kind of a double whammy there.
I mean, I
Yeah.
don't wear high heels, but I get some high heels if that's the rule, to
Yeah.
go.
Whatever the
I'll
dress
wear
code
high
is.
heels. I'll do it.
Yeah, whatever the dress code is.
Yeah.
Let's roll.
What I've been to one festival. I went to Telluride, and
Oh yeah, I've always wanted to go to that one.
it was amazing. But what is it about the festival experience that's your favorite? Like for me, it was just being around people that are there for the same thing, that everybody's there for film and they're just talking and getting into random conversations. And that was my favorite thing. What's your favorite thing about the festival
I mean,
experience?
that is one of my favorite things is being part of the audience, getting to talk to people in line even before you
Yeah.
even get into the movie is really amazing, meeting new people, and then watching like a big world premiere of like this big movie, and then the director, there's the cast there, the audience is just super excited. If it's a funny movie, it's even more funny when it's there, like
Yeah.
when you have that energy. So that's really amazing. And I also just love being part of sort of like many little historical moments. Like I've been to several like world premieres, and that's really cool. Like one of the coolest things that happened to me in 2018 was I went to the Michael Winterbottom movie The Wedding Guest, which stars Dev Patel. It's like this international like thriller. And I wrote a review, and a quote from my review is on the cover of the Blu-ray of the movie, and that was like, what? That's amazing.
I
So
remember that because I remember you posting about it, and then I will see that Blu-ray on like online to buy. Your quote is still on it. Your quote is still on it.
yay, I love that.
It's all these years later. It's still there.
But
Yeah.
the
I mean, that's
festival experience is like just like being in person and being with other movie lovers, and even like each festival has their own vibe. Like TIFF, it they have a huge local presence. There's a lot of Toronto cinephiles, and they're very particular about their movies. So it's so cool just to even hear people like criticizing and breaking down what they just saw and be excited about what they're about to see. So that's really cool too.
Yeah, when I was in Telluride, it was weird because it was almost just like a normal town. Like it was like there was a soccer practice going on in the middle of the town. Like normal life was happening around us. But then there was just tons of people walking the streets, going to the next theater, waiting outside, and at the time, that time of the year, it wasn't quite ski season yet. Hadn't snowed yet, but it was in the mountain. You could see snow on the tops of the mountains, but wasn't quite there yet. But yeah, it was amazing that it's like the whole town gets turned into this big festival. Some of the theaters are there all year round, and a few of them are made up for the festival. And yeah, yeah, it was just cool, man. I took a ski lift down the mountain to get into the town, and it's like this big intro, this big thing. You see the whole festival in front of you as you're going down the mountain, and then yeah, you
That's
just
so cool.
it was I don't know. I don't know if I need to go to another festival, because that festival was
You've
so
been
amazing.
spoiled. You've been
I
spoiled.
just want to go back to tell you, right, honestly. But
The TCM hosts go every year. Like that's
Yeah.
their one festival. They just go for fun. And it kind of kicks off the fall season of festivals
It
too, because
does,
then you
yeah.
got Telluride, and then you got TIFF, and then you got all the other ones that stack
Mm.
after.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know the Venice Film Festival's around that time as well, and all
Yeah,
the celebrities show up on gondolas and whatnot. Um, I'm a big Paul Newman fan. Like Paul Newman's my favorite actor of all time,
I love
and
Paul
there's
Newman.
always the pictures of him at I think like the 1963 Venice Film Festival that people always share every single year on social media, and I'm like, yep, just Paul Newman 1963 Venice Film Festival, him on a gondola, and people go crazy for it.
There's some
So,
great pictures of Robert Mitchum on the beach at Cannes, and like I love
oh
those
yeah.
old festival pictures. Yeah.
It's very interesting. I was thinking of that earlier, how like now we're kind of making our own versions of that now with our modern day celebrities, or even
Yeah.
like the kind of older generations of celebrities. Because I know, I mean, I think we talked about him a little bit before. Jack Nicholson kind of just came out of, not the kind of resurged out into the open, like he's at the Laker games now and whatnot, and you're seeing him interact with other celebrities there, and it's kind of interesting because we look at these older pictures of when those generations of celebrities were older interacting at public events, award shows, film festivals, and we're kind of now making our own memories of those. And I just find it very fascinating because one day, 10, 20 years from now, people will be looking at these social media pictures that we see now and reminiscing about them like we are reminiscing about ones from, 50, 60 years ago. It's kind of interesting how
Absolutely. Like
time
the
moves on.
classic movie era keeps expanding as we get further and further away, and new classics are being made every year. And also some
Yeah,
movies are being forgotten too. Like it kind of all evolves over time.
it really does. The movie history, film history is always expanding, and I think our minds kind of have to kind of expand with them. You know,
Mm.
there's always a lot like there's always a lot of things when it comes to what's considered a classic film. There's always people arguing like, oh, nothing past 1980s should be considered a classic movie. You know what I mean? There are arguments
Mhm.
when ECM airs a more modern film, like
Oh
from the
yeah, it
90s
gets
or even
pretty heated.
2000s. It gets very heated, and I'm like, some of these movies are 20, 30, 40 years old now. It's getting to
Yeah.
that point where those films are considered classics now from the 90s. It's very interesting how our mind has to kind of shift as time goes on, but some people don't really want to shift
They
with
don't
the
want to shift.
times.
They don't want to shift their mind. But
They don't.
And some
but getting
people are very particular. They're like, "Oh, it has to be from, 30s to 50s." And they won't even take older than that because they don't want to see silence, like people get very particular. I have more of an open mind. I mean, my guideline for classic movies, what I cover, has like stretched out into like the early 80s, and that will just keep going as the years progress.
yeah,
Yeah, I think there are certain eras that I think are kind of marked off. You know what I mean? Like we talk about like the classic noir era. I consider from 1940 to like 1958. You know what I mean? I think of
Mhm.
like the Maltese Falcon to Touch of Evil is like my
Mhm.
bracket of classic film noir. I know other people shift to like late 30s, maybe more into the 60s, but that seems to be my the way I recollect it.
yeah.
Right.
Now, speaking of things that are kind of getting left behind, you did talk about how you write about DVD Netflix, and of course, we found out that that's going away this year. So
I
tell
love
us,
my DVD.com.
yeah,
Yeah, for as long as I've been following Raquel, she's been championing DVD Netflix,
yeah,
which I don't even know if a lot of modern people who use Netflix realize that that's the way Netflix started was mail-in
Yeah.
DVDs.
yeah.
I
So
mean, I started it in college when it
yeah,
was in 2002 that I had started, and it was just DVDs. There was no streaming.
yeah. Yeah, it was something that was I always knew about, but I wasn't quite on board with it. Like I mean, I was still going to Blockbuster, I guess. And we had some more independent video stores in the area, so I went to them places. But I'd always heard about it, and then one day, then the streaming thing started. But so since that's going away, what's going to happen with the articles, or what are we going to do now? I mean, is that going to end with the DVD Netflix era of articles, or what are you going to move on to?
I know, that's really sad. I've been working with DVD Netflix since 2017, and it's kind of wild since because I've been a pretty consistent member for like over 20 years. I used it a lot in my early education of movies, and I too also did like my local video store, then
Yeah,
Blockbuster, and then Netflix. So like I'm gonna save my articles, and I'm still writing for them. They're in their last season, going to September, and my editor is like really excited for me to just like contribute some interesting pieces about what people can rent right now before it's called Get Through My Queue, and it's basically like
yeah,
make sure you tackle all those movies that you want to see, because DVD Netflix has always been a really great place, especially in the streaming era, to watch a bunch of things, especially if you're more of an intentional movie viewer. Like you kind of know what you want to see and you don't want to pay for like 10 streaming services. You know, I
yeah.
have several streaming services, but like I had to like shut off Hulu for a bit. Like I can't afford all of them, but I always had my DVD Netflix one where, okay, if it's on Hulu, but it's also on Blu-ray here, I can just rent it and watch it. And it was a great way for me to do research, and I didn't mind just waiting for the next movie on my queue. I don't need that instant gratification. And also like streaming, like it can get really overwhelming too. Like there's so many choices, then I just don't pick something because I'm just overwhelmed. I'll just watch Out of the Past again, or I'll watch like whatever is on TCM. So
We've talked about that kind of conundrum of we talk about how there's access to almost anything you want these days, but what it also does is it kind of kills the kind of anticipation factor of something, like, or discovering something on your own.
yeah.
Instead, algorithms are sending you things and putting them in your face, and you're not investigating, so you're not creating your own excitement for something. And that's what, like you said, that's what you're doing when you're an intentional. You're going out and you're seeking something, or you're investigating a filmmaker, or you're doing your own kind of work that makes that more enriching. And that's what was so great about the idea of renting movies and DVD Netflix or Blockbuster or whatever
Mm,
video store you went to,
Yeah.
that you could put in that work. Convenience is not necessarily always a good thing. So
right. And
No.
I know around the same time that Netflix was doing this stuff, that Redbox showed up, where you could physically rent movies at wherever you could find a Redbox, whether it be at your local Walmart, whether it be at
Mhm.
CVS's. There would always be a Redbox outside of those. Redbox is still around, I
it's still
think,
out there. It
but
is.
Yeah, it's
it's
still
much
around.
smaller than it was before. Like I think their presence isn't as much known. So there are ways to rent. I know, up around here, a lot of the local rental places, once streaming came, they were all pretty much gone. All the blockbusters ended up and whatnot. They just couldn't compete in all of those things. I remember being in high school when Netflix was starting to get up and up before streaming, but people were talking about the renting of the renting over mail and whatnot, and
Mhm.
this was like the mid 2000s. And yeah, and then streaming kind of took over from there. And streaming, like Raquel said, there are so many streaming services now, to the point you're paying pretty much exactly what you were paying for cable. It's reached that point
Yeah.
where especially with the expansion of the prices of, when I first started streaming Netflix, it was $8 and now it's 20. And that was,
Mhm.
I think, 2011 or so, around there, maybe a little bit before that. And so over a decade they've gone up significantly in price, and then the other ones have resurged as well. It's tough to get all of them and to be able to afford it, and whatnot. And so physical media is still, I think, making a little bit of a comeback. Not a comeback, but its resurgence is, I think, kind of happening. Um, you had the Disney CEO recently say, "Hey, maybe we should be investing more into the physical media side because their streaming is kind of going down. The streaming bubble, I think, is kind of going shrinking. The post-COVID times, things are kind of shrinking back down. So it's very interesting, kind of the way the landscape is going, I think, when it comes to how we consume movies. The biggest thing, which is great for me, or for I guess another a lot of classic film fans, is the availability to stream classic movies. I think is a huge thing.
Hmm.
I remember Filmstruck was a massive gain in that.
Oh, I
Um,
miss
I
Filmstruck. It
always
was
bring
so
it up.
amazing.
Did you ever do any work for Filmstruck?
No, I came after
Okay.
that. But that was like the marriage of TCM and Criterion, and it was just magical. Like the curate, I mean, Criterion Channel is like amazing, but like it was just the Filmstruck, the curation was just really interesting. What they did with their social media was really engaging and fun, and it was just a magical time. And they like, I remember like Martin Scorsese was just upset when like they announced that Filmstruck was shutting down. He's like, how could we save it? I mean, like everyone up to like celebrities and well-known directors loved it too. So there's a lot of love around that.
Yeah,
But yeah,
there
like
were.
go
Yeah,
ahead.
I was just gonna say there were a lot of people in the TCM realm who worked on a lot of different aspects of
Yes.
Filmstruck. I know Alicia Malone, who's a host at TCM now for years. She was doing a lot of work over there. I remember her at film festivals, at different merchandising groups when it was first getting off the ground and whatnot. And she would do a lot
Mhm.
of hosting segments for that as well.
She
And
did
so this
Filmstruck
was years ago.
Fridays.
Yes, she did. Yes, she did. Oh
That was
my
a great
goodness.
series.
Yeah,
Like
I
I
haven't
she was actually, I mean, I would watch, she used to have this amazing YouTube channel where she would vlog at different festivals and
I
I would
watched them
watch
all.
her. Yeah, no, I was completely amazed, and I would actually watch all of her South by Southwest festival vlogs before I went there to learn how it was, and I wrote to her and I'm like, "What should I do?" And she was very like forthcoming with advice. I was mentored by her at one point, so she was really amazing. And I know that that's how she got her start at TCM was with Filmstruck, and then it moved from there. So it's cool
Yeah,
to see her as like a host.
I had followed her work even before then when she was doing several YouTube movie related shows and whatnot for other different companies and
Her
whatnot when
indie
she was
movie
doing
guide
hosting.
is still up, and it's
Yeah,
I love that.
I
I've
remember,
been watching some of those that she recommends.
I remember when her and Scott Mantz were doing a show. Her and Scott Mantz would also their own
Oh
show
yeah.
afterward, where they would interview certain celebrities and whatnot, and they would talk about movies. And then I have several of her books actually. Actually, I've read.
Yeah.
I have to get her third most recent book that she did, but I have her first two. I do have. And then yeah, she did a
Girls on
lot.
Film.
Yes, was the second one, and then the first one was it Backwards and in Heels? That
Yeah,
famous
Backwards and
quote
in
about
Heels.
Ginger
Yeah.
Rogers.
Yes.
And I remember seeing her at the Sundance Film Festival. And I'd always wanted to go to Sundance, and then I would see her like walking back from screenings late at night when it's like 15 degrees and there's like 6 feet of snow on the ground, and I'm like, oh, maybe I won't get to Sundance. Maybe it looks a little harsh out there.
That's the one thing with festivals, you have to have like this endurance, and sometimes you have to sacrifice sleep and food, and that's something I have a hard time with that. Like I need my sleep and I need to eat my meals
Yeah,
to keep myself going.
the logistics of going to film festivals, especially if you want to see as many movies as you can. If you're not, I don't know, because I think you've gone as probably as just like buying a guest pass as well as a press pass, and I'm pretty sure there's a difference between that.
Well, for the TCM Classic Film Festival, the media pass and the basic classic pass that gets you into pretty much everything are equal. You don't really get any
Oh,
special benefits. There are like some press events that you can apply for, but really it's just a pass like the regular standard pass. But for other film festivals, it differs. Like South by Southwest has all these different levels of passes. Some festivals don't even do passes. They just do like single tickets. Like the International Film Festival in Boston here, I think only does like single tickets. So Yeah, it varies. And yeah, each festival is different. Like I'm never hungry at South by Southwest because there's food trucks everywhere, there's restaurants everywhere. It's so easy to get a meal. TCM, I'm always hungry.
It isn't the TCM Fest like like in Hollywood, in Los
It's in
Angeles, right?
Hollywood. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
and
Roosevelt is like the hub of it, and that's where the headquarters really of the festival is. And then a lot of the movies are shown across the street at the TCL Chinese, what was known as the Grauman's, and then the Chinese multiplex next door, and then a few theaters like nearby.
Yeah, and I know South by Southwest is also not only a film festival, but they have a music aspect to it, and there's a business aspect to it, and it goes for like let's
Education,
go,
tech, like it's a
yeah,
big, like it's like a festival of festivals.
yeah, it goes for like 2 weeks, doesn't it? It goes for quite
Yeah,
long.
that's a really long one. Yeah, I only end up going for 4 or 5 days for just the film one, but you could be there 2 weeks and just do a bunch of really cool stuff.
Yeah, same as was it what there's a Canadian film festival. It's pretty long too, wouldn't it? The one that's up there
Talk
recently
about,
happened at the beginning of the year, right?
talk about Fantasia Fest.
Fantasia Fest, isn't that pretty long too?
I think it
It,
is, but I thought
it's like,
I thought that happened later in the year. Or am I thinking of Fantastic Fest?
or maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah,
One of them's pretty long as well. It's like
right.
it was like a couple weeks long or something like that.
Yeah, I've
There's a
always wanted.
Seattle one that's a month long.
Oh wow,
Wow, you just live in Seattle for a month.
yeah, just go live in Seattle. Yeah,
I've my one of my ones that I always wanted to go to, and I thought of going to it before the whole pandemic thing happened, was the Provincetown Film Festival that happens every June
Oh, that
in
would be
Provincetown,
really
Cape Cod.
cool.
I know it's all the way at the end tip of Cape Cod. It's like a 3-hour drive from where I live, probably maybe closer to where
Okay.
Raquel
I
maybe
would
lives
take a
closer
ferry
to it.
over. I wouldn't want to drive
Probably
like all the way
right
up.
over the
Yeah.
bay. Yeah, I live like just around Providence, so it's about like a 3-hour drive. I've been to the Cape many times. I've never been to the end where Provincetown is.
I haven't
Um,
either.
and it's always one I wanted to go to because I always want to meet John Waters, and I know he goes there every year.
I
And
have heard that. Yeah.
I always mention John Waters at least once on every episode here, so this is my one
Nice.
for this episode.
do
I,
you every
yeah,
episode? I've never
not
noticed
every
that.
episode, but most of them. And I always hold up my copy of Pink Flamingos that I have next to me
It's
for
weird
Nice.
moral support.
for no reason.
For
Just
For no
it's a
reason.
running joke with the DVD Netflix crew that every time we have a DVD chat on Twitter, that Cary Grant's mentioned at every single one, and
Oh,
it's very
nice.
consistent.
Oh, good. He should be mentioned for everything. I have certain movie collecting goals for certain actors and actresses where I want to get all of their work. Cary
Nice.
Grant's one of them. So I'm always
Okay.
trying to get every Cary Grant film I possibly can. It's tougher to find his earlier work, but it's starting to come out now. Like I know they've
Mm,
released all of like the Mae West films, and he was in one of those. So I got to add that to the collection and whatnot. Yeah, I've always been a big fan of Cary Grant. Just one of my all-time favorites, really. I got into him when I started getting into Alfred Hitchcock, and he
oh,
was
okay.
in, you know,
North by
Suspicion,
Northwest
Notorious,
and yeah.
Northwest, and I was just and enthralled by him, and of course, the one he was in with Grace Kelly,
to catch a thief.
To Catch a
Oh, yeah,
Thief.
To Catch a
Thank you.
Thief. Yeah, that's my husband's favorite.
Nice.
Yeah. I have the same. I have a similar goal as Andrew said. Mine's Nicolas Cage. I just I get every Nicolas Cage movie on Blu-ray.
Nice.
even
Nice.
the last 10 years worth of Nicolas Cage. But so speaking of we talked about your collection of books, but what about film, physical media film? Are you collecting? Is there a movie collection in there somewhere too?
Yes, so this is upstairs in the loft to keep away from my dog. And then downstairs by the television, and enclosed is my movie collection. And I was looking at my movie count. I have about 900 plus individual movies, but I have them across lots of different things like Blu-rays, DVDs, box sets, and all sorts of different box sets. I have a lot from Warner Archive, Kino Lorber. I have a modest Criterion collection. collection basically, but I would love to increase that. It's like I just got the Romeo and Juliet release that they did in February. Super excited about that because I had never owned that movie, but I love that movie. So that was really cool. But yeah, I'm still collecting. Actually, I was part of a Blu-ray release. I was a contributor to the Indicator series release of State of the Union from
Yep.
1948.
Yeah,
I got
we
to write
mentioned
a
we
booklet
mentioned
essay
that.
for it. Oh, okay.
Yeah, we mentioned that when it happened, because there've been a lot of people that I've known through the social media that have contributed to the Indicator things, writing essays and whatnot, which has been fantastic. How did that kind of come about? If I don't mean to sidetrack you.
Oh no, I was invited by somebody who works at Powerhouse, I believe it is, Powerhouse Films, and it was like, "Hey, we needed a last minute writer." And I was like, "Yes, please." That's like a bucket list item for me, was to write for a booklet essay for a Blu-ray release. I really thought that was going to be something really cool to do. And yeah, that was just like awesome. And I'm like, hey, I'll do more if you'd like. I write research articles all the time. It's my expertise. So I'm happy to do it. And I mean, like, it also, like, there's so many like really great boutique labels. I know you guys talk about this a lot, but Indicator is really interesting. Like Undercrank Productions, which is like a small boutique label run by the silent film accompanist Ben Modell. He's been doing really great things, and he's having his like 10th anniversary, I think, next month.
Okay.
And then it's like Flicker Alley, like their collaboration with the Film Noir Foundation has been really cool, and they've had some like really interesting releases. Repeat Performance is one of my favorites of theirs. Like, it's really cool. You know, it's still going, even though it's the threat of streaming kind of looms over us. But there's so many of us who are very passionate about physical media, and it's not something I can give up. My collection will still grow as long as I can. And my big thing is I have like an obscene number of my favorite movie, Bachelor Mother from 1939. It's my top
What
favorite
is
movie. I have like
what is your
10
count?
copies of it. I
Oh,
think 10 right now.
what did you end up
Um,
maxing out on in terms of how many you owned throughout
oh,
all of it?
I've owned over 30, but the thing is I acquired them to give them away. So
Yeah.
I wanted at least, because what happened was when I first saw that movie on TCM, I recorded it on a VHS tape, then I lost the VHS tape for years. And then I would record it every time it was on. And then when it came out on DVD from Warner Archive, I was like, I need multiple of this of this movie. This is my favorite movie. What if I lose it again? That fear of losing it. And then I just decided, oh, I should just give this out to my friends. Like, it's my favorite movie. Would it not be like a fun gesture just to give my favorite movie to my friends? So I would buy extra copies when they had their big sales, and I would just randomly pick a friend to send it to. And it was like a kind of a goodwill like thing that I did, and I still have more. I've given them away on my blog, and I just like passing along my favorite movie.
Yeah, you never have to worry about getting people birthday presents, holiday presents. You always have something like in reserve. You know what I mean?
Probably
You're
gonna get
always
sick of me
ready.
at this point.
She's given me 3 copies.
I know, 3
Like,
copies.
please.
I don't know what to do. Um,
I try
out
to
of
keep track so I don't send people multiple.
oh goodness. Oh goodness, because yeah, that could probably happen. I always used to do that too. I used to buy people movies as gifts, but then I couldn't remember, do they have this movie already? Do they not have it?
Oh
Because it used to
yeah.
be mutual friends who were also collectors as well. So I was like,
Mhm.
I hope they don't already have this.
I
So
mean,
it's
I
like,
have been given multiple copies of The Friends of Eddie Coyle, the book and the movie. So, I mean, people knew I'm a Robert Mitchum fan, so they're like, "You gotta have this." I'm like, "Thank you, I already have it."
yeah,
I try not
yeah,
to say that I have it. It's like, it's
yeah,
fine.
you
Now I have
can't.
the Blu-ray.
Yeah, you can't have enough Robert Mitchum, I think. I mean, talk about out of the
No.
past. We just talked about, because Warner Archive is releasing Angel Face on Blu-ray.
Oh, the
So
Otto
we just
Preminger, yes.
brought about that. I did bring up the story of the I isn't actually, I'm glad that you're here because you can confirm this now. Isn't that the making of is when Robert Mitchum hit Otto Preminger during the making of that movie?
Slapped him across the face.
I was right then. Yeah. And I
Yeah,
think
because
it had
he was directing a slap, I think, and then Robert Mitchum was like, "Is this how you want me to do it?"
Yeah.
yeah. And it
Would have
had
been cool
Amazing.
to see in person.
Yeah,
Because
it's hard
auto
to believe that
premature. Yeah. Go
it's
ahead.
hard to believe that anybody would hit anybody on a film set
Yeah, because it's
nowadays.
never
That
happened.
would never happen
Yeah.
now. Um, you would hear about it the next day, and somebody'd be getting sued. Somebody be no.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, it's happened not recently. I couldn't think of a thing,
Well,
but
I
I
mean, we know
remember.
about Will Smith. We know
Well,
that
not,
happened,
but I
but
meant like
that's something else.
that happened with George Clooney with when they did three was it three what's the movie he did with Three Kings, the David O. Russell
Three
film.
Kings, yeah, David O.
Yeah,
Russell.
I'm pretty sure they almost got in a fist fight during the making of that
Oh
movie.
yeah, I've heard that story. Yeah,
Yeah,
or even I think there was a lot of kind of fighting on The Revenant with DiCaprio and Hardy. Like there
Oh.
was a lot of like
Hmm.
because Inarritu had them out there in the set. They hated making that movie because it was so
Well, he
like
shot it like on
yeah
location during
yeah
the winter, I think,
yeah
Yikes.
because they wanted to get this specific lighting, like the natural lighting, a
yeah
la like a Terrence Malick or something like that. Because well, it was shot by Lubeski, who I think did most of Malick's work, I think. Um,
yeah
and yeah, it's yeah, so that thing can happen. There are a lot of egos when it comes to filmmaking. That's a whole other
sure.
podcast.
Yes.
But yeah, so Bachelor Mother has always been your favorite film. Well, not always, but it's been your favorite film now for years, I think. What is it about that movie specifically that kind of drew you to it?
I think it's just light fun. I love the New Year's theme of like starting over, and I like how it kind of shows you what they had to do with the production code. Essentially, it's a movie about an unwed mother, but she's really not an unwed mother because she just found this baby on the doorstep of an orphanage, and everyone thinks it's hers. But that's how they got away with telling the story of an unwed mother, kind of climbing the ranks and marrying this guy who runs a department store. So I like kind of that subtlety. It's a fun movie. Ginger Rogers and David Niven are really great. There's lots of like fun jokes. And it's just a comfort movie. I just like watching it every year. It's something to have on the background, or just like I like to sometimes not watch it for a while and then watch it with kind of a fresh perspective. And I don't know. We all have our comfort movies that we watch over and over again, and this is one of mine.
Yeah, mine used to be The Dark Knight for some reason. Like that when I was a kid, like it was like I would put The Dark Knight on, and it was always Batman was always on in the background. But then it was The Matrix as well. The Matrix
Yeah,
was another one that I had on the background.
I mean,
Always, you know,
for me, it's always been Lord of the Rings. I've always growing up, I was
Ah,
always big into fantasy, sci-fi. It wasn't until later on where I got into more classic
yeah.
cinema and more dramatic cinema and stuff like that. Um,
Now, if it was classic, I always it happened one night is like my
mm,
favorite, one of my
oh,
favorite
that's a
classic
I
great
films.
one.
introduced
Yeah,
Steven. Not, I didn't
you
introduce you to
did,
that movie.
you
Yeah,
you
okay, I'll take
yeah
the
you
credit then.
yeah you
Fine.
did.
It happened one night, which is the quintessential romantic comedy. It's the staple of the
Mhm.
whole genre, really. It's the one every other rom-com after would be kind of
Incredibly
riffing off of.
influential. Yeah.
Yeah.
Incredibly influential. What a kind of a just a timeless film, really. A lot of those films from that era of the 30s are kind of, timeless and whatnot in many of its aspects. Um, it's also kind of interesting how classic cinema is constantly referenced throughout pop culture now. You know what I
Oh,
mean? Over the
yes.
years, it never goes away, even up to modern times, and even in modern filmmaking, they're still utilizing camera shots, camera movements, utilizing themes, utilizing production things and whatnot to make modern films. I mean, we're having a new
And also
Indiana.
the
Yeah,
stories too. Like we're all
yeah,
like the Academy loves a movie about movies or a movie about Hollywood. So you have movies like Babylon or Stan and Ollie, or like movies about Mank too, like
Well, I mean,
movies about the industry.
what's that new movie Charlie Day's got coming out that's got a very I mean, I know he said it's influenced a lot by like Hal Ashby's being there, but like his new movie coming out, something full or something
yeah. I
like
think
that.
it literally just came out. It's his directorial debut.
Yeah.
And I think it just came out, and it's what's it called? Uh, I have to look it up. But it's apparently it's been in the works since like 2018, and it's just been sitting on the back burner. Oh, Fool's Paradise.
Fool's
That's what it
Paradise.
is.
Yeah, and
Oh,
it's
Um,
got
okay.
it's about I think movie making, but he plays a character that's silent the whole time. Like it's like this really weird kind of like
I think yeah,
throwback.
I think he
Um,
was kind of influenced by like Charlie Chaplin and something like that,
yeah,
where Chaplin would play, the silent roles and whatnot. Um, yeah, that's what I've heard. And yeah, that movie's been on the back burner, I think, for many years.
it looks pretty good though. I'm excited to see it.
I think when he was working on the screenplay, he sent it to Guillermo del Toro to kind of like help him out with it. And I think Guillermo del Toro gave him
That's
some
an interesting
pointers and helped
choice.
him.
Yeah,
Well, they had worked together on Pacific Rim. I think that
yeah.
was where that connection is from right there. And
And Guillermo del Toro's a huge classic movie fan too.
oh
So
yeah,
Yeah.
his
The
his
Shape of
Bleak House.
Water. The Shape of Water is like
The Shape
oh,
of
I
Water was
love that movie.
A Douglas Sirk monster film, and just
yeah.
Creature of the Black
incredible.
Lagoon, kind of like
Mixed melodrama.
reimagined,
Gothic
and
romance, as he likes to say,
Oh,
Gothic
Gothic
romance.
romance. The
Yeah,
way they sold Crimson Peak as a horror
yeah.
film when it's a Gothic romance, which is completely
He said it
different.
like 1,000 times and nobody
Yeah,
believed him. Nobody believed him. He was like, "It's a Gothic romance. It's a
he
Gothic
said it in
romance."
every interview.
Yeah,
Every
and everybody's
interview.
like, "Ooh, I want to go see the horror movie," and it's like, "It's a Gothic romance."
Yeah.
Nobody believed him.
And even his The Devil's Backbone, which is,
Yeah,
a ghost story, is also like a dramatic historical film. Even with Pan's Labyrinth, with all of the monster effects and all that stuff, is a historical film set during the Spanish Civil War, and it's all about certain thematic depth and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, he's a classic film fan through and through. All that influence in all of his work. Even his Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, not Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. What's the Netflix thing that he did,
like,
Steven?
oh, the
Cabinet of
curiosities.
Curiosities.
Yeah,
Like
um,
he made that show just like Alfred Hitchcock Presents, but
yeah,
with his own flavor to it. He did his own like Alfred Hitchcock intros where he would talk to the audience,
yeah.
and then each was kind of an anthology based off of some type of horror element and whatnot. And it was kind of gave me that throwback to Alfred Hitchcock Presents, which I watched a lot as a kid, probably too young, growing up in the 90s, watching it on Nick at Night. That's where I actually got a lot of my classic Hollywood type of things was watching reruns of classic shows. I Love Lucy, Dick Van Dyke, The Mary Tyler Moore Show, all of that stuff, All in the Family, The Jeffersons, Sanford and Son, all of that stuff from that era was how I was introduced to kind of the entertainment of the past. And then the movies came later.
For me, like especially like in the late 80s, early 90s, like cartoon shows like Tailspin and DuckTales and Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, they all had so many classic movie references. Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers was all film noir. Tailspin was like war movies and westerns, and then DuckTales was kind of like everything else. And these were, creators who grew up like watching these classic movies, and it really like influenced these kids shows that I watched as a kid. So then when I was actually watching the film noir or like these classic movies, I was like, I remember that from that show. Like I
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
remember those old episodes. So like I had that sort of connection, but actually with the Alfred Hitchcock Presents an hour, like all of the classic movie actors eventually made it onto those shows, and would star in like an episode or two. And I watched the entire Alfred Hitchcock hour series. Like I just one year I decided I'm just gonna watch the whole thing. Everyone, like all the big names were on there. So those are really fun. They're like little classic movies.
Yeah, they're incredible, and they're all like tight scripts, tight stories.
Yeah.
They're all like macabre. I mean, I think the first ever episode of Alfred Hitchcock Presents stars Vera Miles, and it's a murder, and it's like that's Alfred Hitchcock kind of 101 doing the whole uh the um, the murder where as an audience member who committed the murder, and the whole time the characters in the the episode or the movie have to figure it out, but you already
Those are the
know as the
best.
viewer. It's great
Yeah.
suspense. Great
The
suspense.
anticipation, like you know what happened, but like the anticipation of seeing them figure it out is really cool.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's like I bring up Rope all the time. The movie literally
Oh yeah.
starts with the murder that the whole film is based
Right.
on, and you're just seeing people literally like in the same room as the corpse, and they don't know it. And this is
Well,
1948. How macabre is that?
well, it's a way of causing creating suspense or scares without letting the film making elements be like the forefront. Like they're not going to use the music to make you scared, or they're not going to use the something like that, a part of filmmaking, to make you scared. Instead, they're giving you the information, and then now your imagination is causing you to get
Well, yeah, that's
intense
the way in
feelings of
which they shot the shower scene in Psycho,
yeah,
where it's so quick cutting that you don't really see the knife penetrating or the murder really being committed, but your mind fills in those blanks,
yeah.
and your mind
Especially the
always makes it.
violin.
Yeah, your mind
The
always makes it more
violins
gruesome.
sound like a knife going through.
Yeah, and like that's the way he's leading you there. You're finishing it in your head.
Yeah.
And there was when I took a whole Hitchcock course when I was in college, and he purposely would manipulate the audiences during his movies, like to hook them and to play with them and all that stuff. Like Rare Window, where you're supposed to be put in the voyeuristic viewpoint of the Jimmy Stewart character, to the point where you're the audience member is becoming the voyeur, and then playing on the whole the tabooness of voyeurism and stuff like that, and it just makes you feel kind of uncomfortable looking back at it. You become almost participating in the actions in these movies, willingly or non-willingly. And I guess that's a whole different kind of ballgame when it comes to entertainment and movies, where I think nowadays, you're almost sitting back and watching the action happen without you kind of being immersed in it for the most part. You know what I mean? It almost seems like, you're just there to watch a show versus like participating in this event that's going on. I mean, of course, different screenings, different people have different tendencies and whatnot. But I just feel like that old sense of movie making may be a little bit lost now. It's very fascinating how the history of all of that has kind of gone on.
Yeah,
Um,
there's a lot more passive watching than active watching, and
mhm.
active watching is so much more fun.
Very much so, very much. And I think a lot of that has to do with the way in which we consume movies now. We have
Yeah.
people watching movies on their cell phones while riding in a car. It's a
A
lot
a
different.
really sad thing that's happening now is people are watching movies on short little clips on TikTok out of order. And
I've
it's
seen
like,
that.
and there's no credit of the movie or like who made it, because they don't want to get in trouble with copyright. And so you have these people watch these little clips of movies. They're like, what happens next? And it's like part 1 of 17. But that's like, you're not watching the movie. That's not really a good way to watch the movie,
that's a
but
flip book. That's a flip book.
it's a flip book.
That's
It's
not that's not
awful.
that's
It's
terrible. I
it's
didn't even know about that. I
yeah.
hate that.
Well, Steven,
And
you're not on
also
the
there's another
TikTok.
thing too,
Yeah.
where they don't actually just show you clips of the movie. They just like will narrate what happened in the movie and show you little parts of the whole movie and condense it into a minute or two. That's even worse.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
How did you get motivated to make that
pe-
kind of
People's
stuff? I
attention
don't.
spans are very
Ugh.
short, I guess. But you're missing so much when you condense a movie. I don't even like to read abridged books. When I see abridged, where basically shortened versions of books, I'm like, no, no, I
Nope.
don't want this at
Yeah.
all. Because they back in when I was in school, you could buy the abridged version of certain classic books or the unabridged, and the unabridged was the full book. The abridged was the shortened version of it. And I guess
I remember
depending
that.
on the teacher,
Yeah.
which one version you would get.
But finishing up with you, Raquel, just to leave, we know because we know you're a big classic, as we've talked about this whole episode, classic film fan. What are if there was? I mean, I know I'm putting you on the spot. If there was like 2 or 3 classic films other than Out of the Past, we know that that's essential, that you would like people to check out, and we know your favorite film as well. Don't use that one. That you should tell people to check out. What are some films that you think that you really maybe that are a little bit underseen that they should check out?
So, if you think about like different parts of the classic movie era, like for example, Pre-Codes, there's a really wonderful movie called Safe in Hell, and I love to recommend that one. It's kind of like the Me Too movie of the Pre-Code era, and it's just about this woman who is basically like it's I think Dorothy McHale's in it, and
I think it
she's
just got
basically
a
screwed over
release.
by the mail. Yeah, it
Yeah,
just got a Blu-ray release, I think, from
yeah,
Warner Archive.
It did, yeah.
That one's a great that like is a way ahead of its time, and
okay,
it has like it starts in an urban setting, goes to a tropical setting. So for pre-code, I recommend that. For film noir, if you've already seen like the big ones like Double Indemnity or Postman Always Rings Twice, The Setup from 1949 is
oh yeah,
one of my
yeah,
absolute favorite movies. Robert Ryan, it's like part boxing movie, part film noir, and it's told in real time, and it's like a tight like hour and 12 minutes, so
yeah,
that's a solid movie. And I don't know, there's so many more, like watching some Fritz Lang silence like Metropolis, or even
oh yeah,
Woman in the Moon that predicted
oh yeah,
some space travel. So there's a lot of like I actually prefer to research and write about the movies that are lesser known rather than like the big ones like Rear Window or Citizen Kane. And I feel like they're
yeah,
talked about a lot. The smaller films need to be championed too.
Oh,
yeah,
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 I bring that up all the time where uh anytime classic film is celebrated, it's always the usual suspects. It's always Gone with the Wind, Casablanca, um, Lawrence of Arabia. It's always all of those films that are on like every single Oscar highlight reel or Academy Award highlight reel when there's a super wealth of just like films that aren't talked about,
Hmm.
that are really, really just absolutely amazing films, especially foreign films. Foreign films, there's a lot of foreign films that people not really recognizing, or really talking about a lot. I'm a big fan of Ozu and Kurosawa and a lot of other foreign
and
filmmakers and
and
whatnot.
through physical media, we're learning a lot about Canada right now.
Yes, there's
Yeah,
been a really big push recently for Canadian films kind of being unearthed right now. A lot of people that
Yeah.
we talk to, a lot of companies that we talk to from Canada are really putting out a lot of great stuff that we didn't really know existed until now.
yeah,
And
And
it's being
it's cool that you mentioned Akira Kurosawa because like he's mostly known for his like samurai movies, but like I watched One Wonderful Sunday the other day, and that is a fantastic like post World War II kind of like romantic drama set in like the in Tokyo, and you see kind of the ruins of Tokyo in the background. I mean, even less like even if you have a big name like Akira Kurosawa, there's some lesser known films too that are very enriching.
Yeah,
there is.
I watched his movie Dreams last night, and it's completely different than, like you were saying, his samurai films, or even like kind of his early crime films, or post-war
Mhm.
films. The whole movie is he's literally making like vignettes. There's 8 vignettes in it, and they're all based off of dreams he's had, and they're all just individual. They're all fascinating. They're all metaphorical in certain ways, and some of them are just kind of weird, and some of them are more traditional. But just taking that kind of concept of dreams and putting that on
Yeah.
screen is is
It's so
is
interesting.
fascinating.
It's a new
Um,
Criterion, right?
It was
um,
a 4K. They
yeah,
upgraded
it
it.
just got
4K. Oh,
announced. The
okay.
4K
Yeah,
is
yeah,
coming out, but the Blu-ray's been out since 2016, I think,
yeah.
Oh,
somewhere
okay.
around there.
Okay.
That was put out by Warner Brothers on DVD back in the day. I think it also was produced by Warner Brothers too. Um, so I'm surprised that Criterion got their hands on it for a bit. I thought they would put that out themselves. Warner Archive does some of the best work that they've unearthed in a while. All of the Warner
Yeah.
Archive releases, regardless of the quality of the film, their work. We always talk about how great their work is, Steven.
Oh yeah, their restorations are
I
amazing.
love I mean, Raquel, just to go back to a little classic, I love the Thin Man series with William Powell
Oh,
and Myrna Loy.
yes.
And
Yes.
I bring this up all the time. There was fear that Warner Archive was going to shut down because of, the turmoil that goes on with the business side of Warner Brothers and whatnot over the last several years. And I'm like, I just hope they just reach that 6th Thin Man movie on Blu-ray, then they can shut down. That's all I want. Just
Nah.
Or like the Forbidden Hollywood collection. I was hoping they would finish
my
number
goodness.
10
Oh,
before,
Yeah.
I've got oh my, because they put out all of those on DVD, didn't they? Because I've got most of them here. The pre-code Forbidden Hollywood
Yes.
stuff. This
I
is the
have
one
all
that was
10.
yeah, you're lucky. I'm so jealous. Um, because yeah, they put these out in concert with TCM many years ago.
I have
Preco
those like original ones, and then they release them on their own, like the rest of them. So the
through Warner
packaging is a
Archive.
little different. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
through Warner Archive, and
So
that's
I
how they
have the
continue that
TCM
run.
ones too.
And yeah, Pre-Code Hollywood is another story for another time, but those work are starting to make a bit of a resurgence on physical media or resurgence or
Mhm.
just resurgence in general.
Yeah.
And then the silent era too. I mean, we could talk about all kinds of incredible stuff that's been going on. I actually just got the avant-garde silent Kino release where it
Oh,
had
cool.
it had a bunch of stuff in there, and now it just kind of like a collection of cavalcade of short films that was really great. And of course, I always bring it up uh, the pioneers of women filmmakers, that set they
Oh,
put
I
out
have
years
that
ago.
one. That's a fantastic box set.
Talk about a history lesson in and of itself of women in film.
The college
Um,
course in a box set.
exactly.
Yeah.
And and going through all of that, you learned certain names like Dorothy Arzner and Lois Weber, and just so many different people who were having full on careers. And then the golden age of Hollywood started, and they disappeared. And you learn about how things progressed to a way more patriarchal world of Hollywood than
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
Um, so physical media is kind of giving us all of that without us
Most
even
It's
really
true.
definitely.
knowing
We
it.
need it. We
Oh yeah.
need it.
We
We need to keep championing it so it keeps going.
well we're gonna keep doing that here. And Raquel, we appreciate you taking the time
Nice.
to chat with us.
Thank
Please tell
you.
everybody. Yeah, no problem. And we should do it again. And maybe next time we bring you on to talk about a specific subject matter. And we can get nerdy about we can just talk about Robert Mitchum movies or something like that.
I would love
Uh,
that.
yeah, that'd be great. So please tell everybody if they want to get in contact or if they want to read some of your work. What's the best place?
So I have all of my like main work at raquelstecher.com. It's like my writing portfolio, but I also run a blog called Out of the Past blog.com. That's where I talk about classic movies, and then kellmovies.com is where I talk about new movies and new film festivals. And then I'm mostly on Twitter at Raquel Stecher while it's still around. So I love
Yeah,
talking to the classic film community on there.
awesome. Well, Raquel, thank you again, and we'll see you around.
Thank you.